down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
Yeah, what up? What up? This is your friend Steve VanCauwenbergh, the Savvy Landlord, on the Savvy Radio Show. Yep, Savvy Landlord. How'd you get the Savvy Radio Show? Well, it's just a progression, I guess. Anyway, today I'm covering, you are a rookie real estate investor and you're running into a gas pressure test nightmare, or you're about to get into a pressure test nightmare because you don't know what you're doing because you accidentally bought a property without doing your due diligence. So let me just rewind. There is a friend of mine that just bought a house on a foreclosure, or actually it was through a wholesaler, and he was a smart man. He called me. He asked me a lot of questions, and one of those questions were, the structure, and one of those was, I was like, hey, how long has the property been vacant? And he's like, I don't know. I said, well, it doesn't matter what the wholesaler says or what the realtor says. What you need to do is do your thing called the due diligence. And I'm so amped up on due diligence. It's on the cover of my book that I've written about 4 years ago, which even today is still prevalent. The stuff that I talk about, how to make money, how to buy rentals, how to live like you should. It says right on the cover, due diligence always pays off. And I was like, yo, homie, you need to call all the utilities and get what the average is, and you need to find out when they were the last time they were turned on. Now, why do you want to know this information? Well, number one, you want to know the averages. For example, you're not living there, so people are like, why do I want to know the averages? Well, here's the deal. If the water bill is high, and do you even know what high is? If it's high, guess what? There's a leak under the crib. That's one reason why you should be calling utility companies and finding out what the average bill is. Now, if you were getting real specific and you called them, you might be able to get some more detailed information about the current renter. Now, they normally, and they're not required to tell you anything about them, but you can ask and warm them up and ask them other questions. So you find out what the average bill is. Do you know if that's even average? But, if their water bill is like $100 a month, you have a problem. If they got 10 people living there, that's possible. But if it's just a couple and it's $100, that's high. And so you need to compare that. And then number two, when were the utilities turned off? Or when was the last time they were turned on? So it just depends on how you phrase the question. In Oklahoma, and I don't know if it's in other states or cities, and it's probably changes per zip code, but if the gas has been turned off more than 12 months, so 13 months, there is a law on the books that says that you have to come in and do a pressure test. Wow. So like, good job, lobbyists, good job, plumbers. Because you have to hire a licensed plumber, let me speak properly today, a licensed plumber to come out and do a pressure test, and that opens up a can of freaking whoopee. What do you mean? Why? Well, first of all, there's a fee for that. You got to pull a permit, and there is sketchy plumbers out there, and so let me just give you the broad strokes of how it works, and then I'm going to give you a broad strokes of how to do it yourself. And then let me show you things to be aware of. So hopefully this will be a wonderful episode. And if you're in Oklahoma, you're going to be like, yep. If you're in Chicago, Mueller, sorry, homie. Lee, I don't know. In Indiana, Eddie, I don't know. But this is how it rolls here. So let's just say it's 13 months. You're fixing to buy this property. Well, the first thing, you found that out. And now right there, if it's 13 months, you know in your mind that you're going to have an expense of a pressure test. Now, you can call several plumbers, but here's the thing. I have called, actually I've had myself personally open up a spreadsheet, start calling every plumber I knew, and what do you charge, sir, to do a pressure test? And I got cost, the cheapest I've ever seen is $250 all the way up to $400 or $500. Yep. There's people that are getting stung on pressure tests. Now, what does it entail for a pressure test? Well, what the guy does, he comes over to your property, brings an air tank, pressures it up, and in Oklahoma, it's like 15 pounds of pressure that holds for 15 minutes. That's an average. It's actually a little bit less, but that's just kind of the thing that we've had here. Now, here's the thing. If you, and I'll tell you how to do it yourself, and that's it. Now, that's like $60 to pull the permit and $200 for the guy to come out there, pressure it up, and then go. That doesn't cost or charge. That's the minimum. And I have seen in myself personally, this is why this podcast is in existence right now today, is because I can tell you how to sidestep some stuff and how to deal with it. But we'll just go through it. So the guy comes out there, pressure test, Mr. Licensed Plumber, and then next thing you know. Now, in Oklahoma, you are required anything from the meter to your home. Most gas lines have been ran in the 20s, even in the 50s. Do you really think all those joints, all that line, corrosion, and what type of pipe it is it going to hold? It doesn't hold, okay? So from your house to all the way into your stove, into your hot water tank, there probably is a leak somewhere. It's just inevitable. Now, in Oklahoma City, I don't know about any other rural areas, but OG&E for free. Now, years ago, I've been a real estate investor for 20 years. Now, years ago, if I had a gas leak, I'd have to dig up the line myself at my own cost. But the traded amazing company, yeah, right, will do it now. They will install a new gas line to all the way. They will put the meter all the way up to your property. But wherever the meter is to your home, that side, you are responsible. So your $250 pressure test, or what you're thinking as a real estate investor, the utility's been turned off for a year. Oh, it's no big deal. It's only going to cost me a pressure test. No, there's going to be leaks, and I've seen plumbers charge me $1,000 to try to find one little leak that was on a 45 elbow in the attic. Savvy, not so savvy. So how do you curtail this yourself? Now, the plumber, if he's a good plumber, he'll tell you that all on the front end. So here, as a real estate investor, that's why you tuned in today, is you need to factor that into your cost when you're doing your analysis if the property's worth it. If you call the utility company, if the utilities have been turned off for more than 12 months, I just automatically, right out the gate, $1,000 is what's going to happen. Well, why you say $1,000 if it's just a pressure test? Well, if they do have to dig up the line, you will have to deal with lost revenue. And so that's why you want this thing called a holding cost. So before you even purchase this property, again, for the fifth effing time, call the utility companies. Don't be lazy. Find out when the last time the utility was turned on. So this little plumber comes out there, does a pressure test, doesn't hold. He's like, what do you want me to do? He goes in with his little spray bottle and tries to find the leaks and then correct the leaks. Now, then he's going to start charging you $85, $125 an hour, whatever plumbers charge today. And by the time this podcast, whatever, it can go to $150 tomorrow. And then, I have seen and heard in my own self, plumbers just rack up a bill finding a leak. So then they find the leak and then they pull the permit. Then the inspector comes, and then he shows up in his little white, little four-door free government vehicle and throws a compressor on or an air tank on it. Does it hold? Oh, no, he doesn't hold it. Okay, let me rewind there. So what happens is that you call that plumber calls in the inspection. The inspector says he'll be out there Wednesday at X amount of time, sometime Wednesday. Now, no. With the condensation and the extreme weather changes, if you air up a gas line right now, it will not hold pressure by tomorrow. It's almost impossible because it's on a constant flow of air or gas or whatever you have in that line. Now, if you pressure it up on Monday and the guy's going to come out on Thursday, I'd bet $1,000 that it's not going to hold 15 pounds of pressure. So what the guy has to do, that's why he's charging you $250. When he finds out what time the inspector is going to come, he's going to come out that morning and pressure it up. Hopefully it lasts for 3 to 5 hours, but over time, through dissipation and change in weather, the airline does not last. So if it does last, you get a green tag. Now you get to call OG&E or your local gas company, and you get to turn your gas on. What a privilege. If it's does not hold pressure for 15 minutes, and I think it's less. It's like 10 or I'm not sure, 13 minutes. I'm not sure, but just stick with me on this. 15 minutes, 15 pounds of pressure for 15 minutes. If it does hold, if the inspector drives out there, goes to your backyard, sits there for 15 minutes, it holds pressure, he doesn't move, then he green tags it, you're good. If it does go decline, like he shows up on the property and it's at 5 pounds of pressure, guess what? You got a red tag. Now the plumber has to come back out there. You got to pull another permit, $68, and it becomes a greater nightmare. So that's just because that is on the law books, and that's you as a real estate investor or even homeowner at this point in time. But probably if it's a retail transaction, the gas is still turned on. So what's the lesson that you need to learn already? And I'm about to dive in even harder. But you need to take, if someone has utilities turned on in your property, just transfer the utilities. And so be clear. I was talking to a real estate investor yesterday. They have it in their lease. Utilities need to be stayed on until you turn the keys over to the property manager. You should probably put that in your lease. Let me pause here and write that down. So the tip is make sure you leave the utilities on because you want to transfer it in your name as soon as possible. If for some reason that tenant or the previous owner turns the utilities off and then disappears, and then you call the gas company or utility company back on, that could also trigger a problem as well. What do you mean? That if the gas is turned off, OG&E loves to come in to your home and light your fire. Yeah, it's my fire. Light your water heater. And of course, your water heater is going to be out of code because they constantly change code all the time. So if you listen to a podcast back in the hundreds, you can Google up Todd in there, but they changed the code on the water heater. You used to be able to raise it up on a razor. You had to have it so many feet off the ground, 24 inches or 18 inches. Now the code has changed again. The water heater was designed to be on the floor for explosions. So if you don't have that gas flowing consistently, could potentially turn into a nightmare because you might have to pull a permit over 12 months. 2, you might have an OG&E guy come in and your tenant doesn't, sure, open it up, light my water heater. And they find that the water heater is out of code. And guess what? You got to bring it up to code. They flag it. They shut it off. The tenant doesn't know. They yell at your landlord. That's us. Next thing you know, it's drama. So that's the gist of a pressure test in itself. So I know that's way too much education, but as a real estate investor, what due diligence pays off? You need to know, how does it work? Why are they doing it? And it's happened to me where I got stung with the 1,000 is because I moved a tenant in real quick, didn't realize that the previous tenant had the gas turned off. And then I had to have pressure tests. These people didn't have a hot water tank for a couple of weeks. It was screaming, la-da-da-da-da. So how do you prevent all this jazz today? What are the cool things that you can do today to save money? Well, you can do preventative. Yep. It's early, but let's work on the skill. Preventative maintenance or preventative before you get the drama. You can do all this yourself. Now, you can't pull a permit unless you're a licensed plumber or a heat and air guy. Heat and air guy. Now, put that in the back of your mind. So what you need to do, here's some elements. You got to go buy a gauge. You can do your own pressure test to save a step, okay? So you can not deal with the plumber and then wait on the plumber, and you know what you're getting into before he pulls a permit. Now, if you build relationships with plumbers and heat and air people, they may even pull the permit for you. So here's the supplies you need. You need a $35 little air tank. You can find them in pawn shops, which I don't recommend doing. You can find them at garage sales, or you can go buy them at Home Depot or Lowe's or a tool supply place. I haven't done this in a while, but I pick them up at garage sales years ago for $10. I think they're new between $35. It's a little hand pressure tank. You can go fill it up if you're cheap at 7-Eleven for free. Then you got to have like a gauge. A gauge is between $10 and $15, and you got to have a pipe wrenches, probably 2 of them, the big ones. Again, you could find these at a garage sale, or you can buy them probably $20, $30 in pipe wrenches. So you got a pipe wrench, 2 pipe wrenches, because you got to go one the opposite direction, and then you got a gauge. So you got 35, 50. So worst case scenario, you have $100 in supplies. But if you're in here in Oklahoma City and you down with the OG Steve VanCauwenbergh, Savvy Landlord, I'll loan you this jazz because I probably got 2 or 3 of these because I buy these at the flea market. When I see an air tank, boom, $10. I buy it because people leave them on job sites. People quit and disappear, and this is an ever-ending flow of in and out people. But just to be safe, so you got all this stuff. You go over to the property. Now, I'm not, as a savvy landlord or the real estate investor, I'm not saying that you should do this yourself, but you could have your lawn care guy do this or your maintenance guy do this. But I do recommend doing this before you start calling a plumber and start racking up a bill. 2 ways I do it. So we put okay, let me get my bearings here. You put the gauge on the meter side, outside on the back of your yard. Does it pressure up, holds, make a few phone calls, boom, it doesn't hold. Now, that means it could be the line from that meter to your house, okay? Now, doesn't hold 9 times out of 10, I'm serious, anything that's been built in Oklahoma, the supply line from the meter to the house, there is a leak somewhere, okay? So what you do, super savvy investor, you take that gauge back off. Now, it might hold, okay? It may hold. I'm just letting you know. Now you go to the house where it comes out of the ground, goes into your house. Right there is where OG&E ONG would give you a new meter if you complain, or you have them come out and test it. And maybe that's another podcast because I know this is getting a very long podcast. Then you put the meter on the house, so you bypass the line. Does it hold pressure? Probably will hold pressure. If it doesn't hold pressure, then you get your little spray bottle of water, and then you go every joint, every gas pipe around, and you spray, and you look for that leak. And then you can correct that leak yourself and save you hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars. So all that done, so you realize that it doesn't hold pressure on the line, but it does hold pressure in the house, which it should automatically, because then we were getting into a dangerous issue, okay? So then what you do is that you button it back up on your house from the line. Then you go out and you call ONG, say, hey, I have a gas line leak. I need you to come look at it. So they'll schedule it within a day. You can scream. They'll come out there in hours. They come out there. Yep, we're right. We're going to schedule you for a new line. This is where it takes a week to 2 weeks. They come in. They tear up your backyard. They put a brand new supply line in the ground, usually I think at least 18 inches in the ground. So be prepared. They're going to dig your yard up. Now, the good thing is it's a free line and the meter's closer to the house, so you don't have to deal with it anymore. But it's free, but they're going to tear it up, and they're busy. They're constantly doing this. There's crews that do this all day long. I would say on a minimum at least 6 to 12 days out. So be prepared. So you're trying to rent this bad boy. Get this pressure test organized way before like day one when you buy the property. And that's another trick you should do. You should pull all your permits before you start doing any kind of repairs to the property. So you pull the permit and, okay, so you get that done. They put the new line in, and then you still have to do a pressure test, and then you go from there. So hopefully that will save you tons of money. All right. So hopefully this was good for you. Don't be the mercy of a plumber. Don't cut corners. Don't act like you got your head in the sand. Be the very best real estate investor. Again, you can leverage all this stuff by using a handyman or a friend. And here's another thing. You can get all this done on your own. Then if you built a relationship with a heat and air guy, you can say, hey, man, can you pull a pressure test for me? And it only costs $60 to do a pressure test, and you could actually potentially cut out a plumber and do all this yourself, but ultimately you still have to pull a permit by a trade. Anyway, my name is Stephen VanCauwenbergh. This was a great question. I appreciate my boy for bringing this up, and it was long-winded, but you need as much information as you can. You can realize that it's not as easy as what we think it is, what it says on TV, but it's not difficult. That's the great thing about real estate. There's nothing that's like you got to have a master's degree, or you have to have the skill set of a doctor. But you do need to know what you're doing so you can get stung like I did many years ago. Causes delays. Plumber got me by the bees, and next thing you know, I'm frustrated, and then I stopped buying houses that had gas lines that were not turned on more than 12 months. Now, I realize that I'm not weak and I want to fight that battle. That's right. You're not weak. You made it 20 minutes into my podcast, and I'm proud of you for that. What you need to do, go reward yourself and someone else. How? By go buying an asset. If you are strong financially, you can go out and help somebody else. That's what you need to do, right? It's not about driving around in a Mercedes and I'm cool because I'm a real estate investor. I got X amount. I got 10 houses. I'm cool like that. No, I believe if you're strong, you can help more people. So what does that mean? Go buy assets.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.